Have you ever been in a situation where you longed for something you could never have, or desired someone who was already taken? What would you do if you had everything, yet the one thing you truly wanted was forever out of reach? Would you go to any lengths, spend all your money and wield your power just to get it? Rox is a man who uses his influence and wealth to pursue the woman he desires. He has everything most men could only dream of: thriving businesses that afford him a life of luxury, fame, and immense power. With a mere snap of his fingers, he can have almost anything he wants. But despite all his success, he feels a void within, an emptiness that wealth and power cannot fill. Yama, on the other hand, grew up in a modest countryside life. She had no privileges or connections, just a simple upbringing. Financial struggles were part of her reality, but she found happiness in the love of her family. As the eldest child, she took on the responsibility of helping her parents provide for their family and dreamed of giving them a better life. One unexpected event, however, turned her life upside down, challenging her values, her principles, and her faith in doing what was right. This is the story of two people from completely different worlds, and a man determined to use his wealth and power to win the woman he loves. Their love faces a storm of moral dilemmas, societal judgment, and harsh criticism. Can they survive and fight for a love that was doomed from the start? Yama stared at the man standing before her, perplexed and uneasy about his presence in her home.
"What do you want? Why are you here?"
Yama asked, her voice sharp and devoid of respect. Her furrowed brows reflected her disdain. Yama had lost all regard for this man the moment she discovered his intentions toward her. Rox met her gaze with a dark expression, a subtle smirk curling at the corner of his lips. His arrogant demeanor made her feel disrespected, and she returned his stare with equal intensity, determined to show him she was not intimidated regardless of his status. Rox exuded an aura of power and wealth. Despite his maturity, his youthful appearance shone through. Yet regardless of his impeccable physique and strikingly handsome features, Yama felt nothing but indifference. His charm was wasted on her. She was already committed to someone else.
"I own you. Your husband sold you to me,"
Rox declared in a deep, matter-of-fact tone, as if such a statement were entirely ordinary. Yama's chest tightened with rage and disbelief.
"Who are you to say that? No one owns me. No one has the right to sell or buy me."
Yama spat, her voice trembling with anger. Despite her impoverished circumstances, she refused to show weakness. Rox's smirk deepened as if mocking her defiance.
"Your husband sold you to me. Talk to him. He came to me, and I simply accepted his offer."
Rox said, emotionless, before turning and walking away with his bodyguards as though he owned the place. Yama stood frozen, her thoughts racing.
"How could John do this to me? I'm his wife. He loves me. How could he betray me like this?"
Yama said to herself. Confusion clouded her mind. She remembered the influx of money John had recently brought home. Was Rox telling the truth? A man of his stature wouldn't set foot in their squalid neighborhood unless it was something serious. Moments later, John stumbled into their home, the smell of alcohol clinging to him.
"John, we need to talk. A man came here earlier and said something to me."
Yama said, her voice low but firm. She knew this wasn't the ideal time, but the urgency burned within her.
"Really? That old man couldn't wait, huh?"
John replied bitterly, his tone laced with anger and resentment.
"Is it true? Did you sell me to him?"
Yama's voice rose, her frustration evident. John's tone proved something. John avoided her gaze, grabbing her hands with a pleading expression. Yama's heart sank. His silence confirmed the worst.
"Yama, listen to me. We've been stuck in this place for so long, with no progress, no way out. My father's in the hospital. Your parents need our help, and we're drowning in debt. Rox was our only chance."
John said in desperation. Yama stared at him, stunned by what she heard.
"Our only chance? John, we've worked so hard to survive. How could you do this? How could you even think this was an option?"
John's voice grew louder, frustration etched into his features.
"No matter how hard we work, it's never enough. We'll be trapped here forever if we don't take drastic action. Rox offered us a way out, a chance to start fresh. He was willing to pay us a fortune because he wants you. It's just a one-time thing, Yama. Afterward, we'll have enough to escape this life and build the future we've always dreamed of."
Yama recoiled, her stomach churning.
You're asking me to cheat on you, to betray our marriage, to sell my dignity for money? How can you justify this?
John's tone turned cold and resolute.
It's not betrayal if I approve. Couples do this all the time, some do more than this. It's just a practical decision. Think about it. Our struggles would be over. We'd finally have a chance at a better life.
Tears welled in Yama's eyes as she realized the depth of John's betrayal.
You've already taken his money, haven't you?
She whispered, a tone of defeat. John hesitated before nodding.
I had no choice. It paid for my father's operation, for our rent, for food. Without it, we'd have nothing.
Yama's legs trembled, her entire body shaking with a mix of anger, sorrow, and disgust.
You sold me. My own husband sold me like an object.
Yama said, her voice breaking. Tears fell freely as John stood silent, unable to meet her eyes. Yama's heart shattered, her trust irreparably broken. The next day Mr. Wilford came to their house with his bodyguards. He stood in front of Yama looking intimidating.
Give me a year to show you my true intentions. If you still choose him after that year, or when our contract ends, I will return you to him. I won't bother you or charge him for what he owes me.
Rox calmly promised while looking intently into Yama's eyes. She saw the sincerity in his look.
I only ask for one thing. Can we pretend to love each other for the entirety of our contract? Act like real lovers, both in front of others and with ourselves?
Rox added directly, leaving Yama speechless. In Yama's mind, it didn't seem difficult if it wasn't her dignity at stake. But she lived by a principle. What's the use of money if she loses herself in the process? If she couldn't value herself, who else would respect her? She had little to offer, but her integrity and dignity remained intact. At least she could take pride in those. If she lost them, what would she have left? What Rox offered was, to her, a sin. A grave mistake she wasn't willing to make in exchange for wealth. She looked at him intently, her expression pleading. This time she was willing to humble herself.
In what way can I repay you without involving myself with you? Me without committing a sin.
Yama tried to negotiate with Rox, clinging to a sliver of hope that he might understand her and agree to a compromise.
Nothing. That's all I ask of you. My mind won't change.
Rox replied without hesitation. Then he gazed at her deeply.
I can give you whatever you want. Everything you've ever desired in life, in ways you've never imagined, in exchange for that one-year contract.
Yama could see how serious he was. There was no hint of jest. Rox was known for his firmness and ruthlessness in business.
Why are you doing this? Why me? What could you possibly gain from this? I have nothing to offer. I'm just an ordinary woman with no notable background, average looks, and no accomplishments. A man like you deserves someone equal, rich, famous, capable. Someone you can be proud of.
Yama tried to dissuade him, pointing out the glaring realities.
I have my reasons for choosing you. You're right, I could have any woman with a snap of my fingers. But it's you that I want right now. I see something in you that I don't see in others. Don't ever degrade yourself. Don't you know your worth?
Rox said it firmly. Yama couldn't help but laugh at what she heard, though her irritation and sense of insult were clear.
How can I see my worth when I feel like trash right now? Handed off to another man. Sold by my own husband like a commodity. How can I see my value when someone like you treats me as if I'm disposable?
Yama spat, her voice filled with disgust, hatred, and pain. How can this man not see her agony, her pain, her struggle, she thought. She wanted to cry but held her composure.
You'll understand my reasons soon, but my decision is final. All I can say is that you won't regret it if you choose me willingly and accept my offer. Think it through. We can go about this the easy way or the hard way. Remember, I can make the impossible happen. My words are law in this place.
Rox declared. Yama wasn't surprised by his confidence. His power and influence were undeniable. Rox walked back to his car with his usual arrogant stride, as if he owned the world, oblivious to the people around him who were eagerly waiting for even a glance from him. That was his effect on everyone. But Yama couldn't appreciate him. How could she when he was the reason for her misery? He hadn't even given her a choice. Her thoughts drifted back to how she ended up in this nightmare. One morning she received a letter from the court stating that Rox had filed charges of swindling and fraud against them. That was when Yama learned John borrowed another $50,000 from Rox. The money intended for a startup business had vanished into thin air. The court urged them to respond to the case, but where could they find the money for lawyers' fees when they could barely afford food? Where would they get the money to pay the debt if they were to settle? Yama's mind spiraled as she desperately searched for solutions. John told her the only way out was to accept Rox's offer. They had no other choice unless they wanted to end up in prison.
Where did the money go, John?
Yama demanded. John confessed that he had gambled it away at a casino hoping to double the amount and pay off Rox, but he failed and lost everything. Yama felt utterly betrayed and defeated.
John, didn't you think of me? Do you realize what will happen to me if Mr. Wilford takes me?
Yama cried helplessly, tears streaming down her face. Thinking of what might happen next scares her.
You didn't even include me in your plans. Where am I in all this? I'm your wife. We vowed to face everything together. You didn't even give me a chance to fight for myself.
Yama shouted, her voice raw with anguish. John, while sobbing, replied to Yama.
Yama, I swear I was thinking of you. That's why I wanted to win so badly. So I can pay Rox. I love you and can't bear the thought of losing you to another man. But everything went wrong. I failed you again and again.
They both wept. For the first time in her life, Yama felt utterly defeated. Despite her tough upbringing, she had always been optimistic and determined. But now her world was crumbling. She was on the verge of losing herself, about to commit an act she considered immoral. If they couldn't pay or wouldn't agree to Rox's terms, both she and John would end up in prison. But Yama couldn't afford that. Her family depended on her. She had younger siblings to support. If her reputation was tarnished, how could she ever hope to find work and fulfill her promises to them? Yama had been crying for days, feeling utterly miserable since learning her fate was sealed with Mr. Wilford. She saw no way to change her situation. Yama cherished her marriage and the sanctity of her vows, but circumstances had left her no choice but to accept her fate. As she packed her belongings, knowing Rox would soon arrive to take her away, John stood by, watching her every move. His gaze lingered, but Yama avoided his eyes.
Yama, don't worry. You won't be with him for long. I'll find a way to get the money we owe and bring you back,
John said. Yama smirked bitterly at his words, his false promises ringing hollow. She could sense his fear and anxiety through his trembling voice and hesitant gestures, but she didn't care anymore. How many times had he made such assurances, only for them to crumble? She had heard enough. Perhaps fate had led her here to teach her a lesson, that the man she married was no longer the same. He had been consumed by his vices, tempted by the allure of wealth and blinded by lofty ambitions. Minutes later, Rox arrived and stood beside her, glancing at her suitcase.
Are you done? Let's go.
Rox said with an air of authority, ignoring John entirely. Yama nodded. She had packed only the essentials as Rox had instructed, assuring her that everything else she might need would be waiting at his house.
Wait, I want to talk to both of you before we leave.
Yam interjected. Both men stopped, curiosity flickering in their expressions. Rox signaled his bodyguards to take Yama's belongings and leave them in privacy.
John, how much money did you take from Rox, exactly? I deserve to know since I'm the one you've used as payment.
Yama said, her voice firm but trembling with emotion, afraid of what truth she may uncover. John avoided her gaze, staring at the floor.
$500,000.
John muttered, his voice barely audible. Yama froze. Shock washed over her.
$500,000? How could you have spent such a massive amount in such a short time? All this time you told me it was $50,000. You lied to me again.
Yama shook her head in disbelief, tears brimming in her eyes.
So that's my worth to you?
She said bitterly, a hollow laugh escaping her lips.
That's what we had together, our love, our marriage. That's what it's worth to you.
Her voice cracked as she continued, the pain overwhelming her.
I begged you not to go down this path. I pleaded with you to listen to me. But you didn't care about my feelings or respect me as your wife. You threw everything we built together away. And for what? For this.
Yama's tears fell freely now, but her voice remained steady, trying to look strong in front of the man who betrayed her.
You may be my husband, but you don't own me. You don't have the right to sell me like property. I belong to myself. My life, my decisions, my dignity, they're mine alone. But since you chose this path, I'm choosing mine. This is the end for us, John. I'm done. I'm breaking up with you. From this moment on, you are no longer my husband.
Yama turned to Rox, whose face remained impassive.
Mr. Wilford, can you give me another $500,000 on top of what John owes you? At least then I won't seem so cheap.
Rox gave her a curt nod.
With that money, I cut all ties with you, John. I never want to see or hear from you again. You sold me to this man, so from now on he is my husband. I can't have two husbands, can I?
She shot John a mocking glance, her voice cutting, though inside she was trembling and broken.
Goodbye, John. I hope the money you gained brings you the happiness you sacrificed me for. Don't contact me again. We're done.
Without looking back, Yama walked toward the door. Outside, neighbors gathered, their curious eyes watching the scene unfold. She ignored them, her mind too preoccupied with the storm of emotions swirling within her.
This is the last time I'll step foot here. I'll erase every memory tied to this place.
Yama whispered to herself. As the car pulled away, leaving behind the home she had known for 3 years, a deep sense of emptiness settled in her heart. Though she had no close friends among her neighbors, the house held her struggles, her pain, and her hard work. Now it was just another piece of her past. She glanced at Rox, who sat beside her, silent and unreadable.
This man is the source of my misery. He's no different from the others, only concerned with what they want, no matter who gets hurt. I can't trust him.
Yama thought bitterly. Clenching her fists, she made a vow to herself.
From today, I'm on my own. I'll depend on no one but myself. I will be strong, and I won't let anyone walk over me again.
After an hour of silence, the car passed through a metal gate and stopped in front of a grand house. Yama stared in awe at the mansion, its sprawling front yard dominated by a large fountain. She was so mesmerized by the view that she didn't notice Rox stepping out of the car until he opened her door and extended his hand. Without a word, she placed her hand in his and he gripped it firmly. The maids lined up at the entrance, bowing in unison to welcome them.
Welcome home. Treat this place as yours. Don't hesitate to ask for anything. Whatever you need, they'll provide it.
Rox said to her. Yama nodded numbly, still dazed by the opulence around her. A maid led her to her room, and she was stunned anew by its sheer luxury. The space was vast, every detail designed for comfort and extravagance. Yet, despite its splendor, an overwhelming emptiness filled her chest.
This is everything I could have dreamed of. But why do I feel so hollow and unhappy?
Yama thought to herself. After settling down, Yama's experience at Rox's house amazed her. Everything was new and beyond anything she had ever imagined. Under Rox's care, all her dreams seemed to materialize effortlessly. She no longer had to worry about food, shelter, clothing, or even money. The maids were always at her service, ready to fulfill her every need. While Yama knew Rox was wealthy, she had not fully grasped the extent of his riches until she experienced it firsthand. Yet, amidst this luxury, memories of how she ended up in this situation haunted her. Her thoughts drifted back to the first time she met Rox and the chain of events that followed. It was at a high-profile event, a grand party for one of their clients. Yama and her husband John were part of the catering crew. The guests were prominent figures from the business elite, and the atmosphere radiated opulence. As Yama worked diligently, serving and assisting the attendees, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching her. At first she dismissed it, focusing on her tasks. But when she looked up, her eyes met those of a strikingly handsome man. His sharp, mature features and commanding presence made her uneasy. She felt her heart race under his intense gaze. The man gave her a polite smile and she nodded in acknowledgement before returning to her work. Later, as the event wound down around 11 p.m., Yama took a break on the balcony to enjoy some fresh air.
Wow, this place is amazing.
Yama murmured to herself, enchanted by the view of the city lights and the serene atmosphere. She had never experienced such a tranquil moment in the bustling city.
Is this your first time seeing a view like this?
A voice startled her from behind. Yama turned quickly to find the same man who had been watching her earlier.
Yes, I've never been to a place this grand before.
Yama replied shyly. This man may think she's ignorant.
Why do you say that?
Rox curiously asks.
From a squatter area. The nights there are noisy, and the days are crowded. This is like a whole different world.
Their conversation started awkwardly but quickly flowed into a comfortable exchange. To Yama's surprise, the man, who introduced himself as Rox Wilford, was approachable and kind. They talked about her work, his events, and even their dreams. At one point, Rox handed her his business card to Yama.
If you can, refer me to your boss. I often host events and would love to use your services. I'll make sure you benefit from the referrals.
Yama was overjoyed at the opportunity. She promised to discuss it with her boss, who later welcomed the idea enthusiastically. Rox's reputation as a generous and high-profile client was well known in their industry. From that moment, Rox became a key figure in their business, recommending their services to his network. Yama often encountered him at events, and their interactions became more frequent and familiar. But over time, Yama began noticing changes in Rox's behavior. He treated her differently from others, his gaze lingering on her a little too long, his words carrying an undertone that made her uncomfortable. Then came the flowers, a bouquet sent with a note of appreciation for her work. There was no signature, but Yama knew it was from him. Her colleagues often spoke of Rox as a strict and distant man, yet he was surprisingly warm and attentive toward her. Yama found herself subtly avoiding him, unwilling to encourage any misunderstanding. One evening after a long day, Yama stood on the roadside waiting for a public vehicle. Suddenly, a car stopped beside her.
Need a ride?
Rox's voice called out as he lowered the window. Yama hesitated, but Rox insisted, citing the danger of the area at that hour. Reluctantly, she agreed. The ride was silent and awkward, a stark contrast to their earlier camaraderie. When her stomach growled audibly, Rox instructed his driver to stop at a restaurant. The restaurant exuded elegance, making Yama feel out of place. She wanted to refuse, but Rox gently insisted.
You've been avoiding me.
Rox said over dinner, breaking the silence. Yama hesitated but replied evasively.
I've just been busy, sir.
You call me sir now. What happened to calling me by my name?
Rox remarked with a slight frown.
I don't want to create misunderstandings. I'm a married woman, and I have boundaries.
Yama said carefully, but her words were direct, drawing a clear line. Rox seemed taken aback but didn't argue. When they reached her drop-off point, Rox expressed concern for her safety in the area. Yama thanked him politely but reiterated her independence and boundaries. As she walked away, she resolved to limit their interactions further. Yama knew Rox's feelings for her weren't purely professional. While she appreciated all he had done for her, she was determined to maintain her dignity and the sanctity of her marriage. Now, as she sat in the grandeur of Rox's home, those memories replayed in her mind. She couldn't deny that his actions had led her here. But despite the comfort and luxury surrounding her, Yama felt a hollow ache in her chest, a longing for a life untainted by betrayal and obligation. She vowed to herself,
From now on, I will depend on no one but myself. I won't let anyone control my life or decisions ever again.
Yama was in a trance, thinking about her past when Rox called her for dinner. Lenny escorted her to the dining area. Without her guidance, Yama might have gotten lost in the sprawling mansion. When they arrived, Rox was already seated at the table waiting for her. Yama hesitantly sat across from him, noticing the elaborate spread of food and the formal arrangement of utensils.
Let's eat.
Rox said, signaling for her to begin. But Yama froze, overwhelmed by the unfamiliar table setting. She didn't know which utensil to use and felt out of place. Across the table, Rox ate effortlessly as if unaware of her discomfort.
What's wrong?
Rox asked, his perceptive gaze fixed on her. He seemed to sense her unease immediately.
Just eat the way you're comfortable. Don't worry about table etiquette for now. This is formal dining, and someone will teach you everything you need to know soon. But tonight, just focus on eating.
He resumed his meal, composed and quiet. Encouraged by his words, Yama followed suit, using her familiar habits to eat. Yet despite the luxurious meal, she didn't enjoy it. The silence at the table felt heavy, almost like attending a funeral. To her, dining with the wealthy lacked warmth. She missed the lively, chaotic meals back home, where her family talked and laughed even the food wasn't enough. Once dinner ended, Rox invited her to his office.
I know you have a lot of questions. I'll give you time to ask anything you want to know.
Rox said seriously. So this is the real him, Yama thought, observing his intimidating yet straightforward demeanor. He braced herself. In this unfamiliar world, she had no one to rely on but herself. He had to be strong.
Why did you buy me from him? What are your reasons? We both know I'm not the person you need.
Yama asked, her tone firm. She needed clarity on everything for her to know how to approach her situation. She will think of this as work. It will be easier to accept her situation rather than thinking she's selling herself to someone. Rox regarded her intently.
I bought you because I wanted to help you. I know you have dreams, but your current situation won't let you achieve them. And time is running out.
Yama frowned, confused by his altruism.
Why would you help me? What's in it for you?
You're still young. At your age, you should be exploring life, learning, traveling, planning your future, and enjoying your youth. You shouldn't be stuck in a miserable life.
Yama almost appreciated him for the things he said, but when he heard the last phrase, she couldn't help but feel angry.
How can you say I'm living a miserable life? You don't know me, Mr. Wilford.
Yama said, anger flashing in her voice, didn't care if she offended him.
I'm just stating the truth. When you have big dreams but lack the means to pursue them, it's frustrating. And if you let the opportunity slip away, you'll live with regret. And here I am giving you the chance to your dreams.
Rox replied calmly. Yama acknowledged the truth in his words but pressed on her doubt.
Mr. Wilford, I appreciate your concerns, but everything you've mentioned seems to benefit me. What do you gain from this?
Yama said it in a challenging tone. She can't see the point of why he did this.
I have my reasons. In time, you'll understand my actions. For now, take my offer.
Rox responds in a cryptic way. Yama nodded reluctantly.
May I know the scope of my responsibility? What exactly do you expect from me? I need to know my responsibilities so I can understand my role here. You have spent a huge amount and I don't believe you didn't expect in return. No man will do that, especially to a woman he hasn't had a connection with.
Yama looks at Rox closely. Rox leaned back in his chair, meeting her gaze.
You'll be my companion in both business and personal matters when I am outside the office. You'll attend social gatherings, events, meetings, and even leisure trips with me. Instead of hiring an escort, you'll fill that role. You'll act as my confidant, secretary, and companion. And yes, my woman.
Yama's eyes widened at the bluntness of his statement. She had assumed she was merely his bed partner but now realized her role was far more complex.
Mr. Wilford, I'm not educated enough. I barely finished high school and lack the experience for the task you want me to fill. How can I fulfill your expectations without making myself a fool?
Rox gave her a reassuring smile.
I've already considered that. You'll undergo training, personality development, public speaking, professional etiquette, and more. Someone will coach you on everything you need to know. You'll represent me in many ways, so this training is essential. Think of it as preparation for the future.
Yama felt overwhelmed by the weight of the responsibility. She doubts herself if she can do it.
That's a lot to take in, Rox. I'm not sure if I can meet your expectations.
I trust you can. This is a lifetime opportunity. The skills you gain will help you long after our contract ends. You'll be exposed to experiences that will prepare you for the future.
Yama nodded, acknowledging the wisdom in his words. The training would be invaluable for her. It's like she's going to school.
You'll also be compensated for your work. At the end of our contract, you'll receive your payment in full. Until then, I'll provide you with a card for your expenses and anything you need to send to your family.
Yama was stunned by what she heard.
I didn't expect that. I thought I was just repaying the debt John owed you.
Yama said it in a low voice. Rox's gaze softened upon looking at her.
You're worth more than that.
Gathering her courage, Yama asked. She needed confirmation.
Is it true the contract is only for 1 year?
Yes, I give you my word.
Finally, Yama hesitated before asking because it made her uneasy.
What about the sleeping arrangements? Will I sleep beside you? Will we share the same bed?
Rox chuckled lightly. The question made him smile, but he tried to hide it.
Not yet. We'll work on building a connection first. When the time comes, I'd like it to happen on your own accord, or when I ask for it. After all, I'm a man with needs.
Yama appreciated his consideration but still felt uneasy about the prospect. She knew she would need time to adjust to the role she had taken on. Days passed and Yama gradually adapted to her new situation. Lenny had briefed her on the daily routines and expectations in Rox's house and shared some gossip about his past. Yama learned that Rox was a widower. His late wife had died 10 years ago, along with their unborn child. The revelation saddened her deeply. In her mind, Rox must have loved his wife dearly. Perhaps he still harbored the pain of losing them, unable to move on even after all these years. Maybe that was why he remained single at his age. Although there were rumors of him dating various women, none of the relationships had been serious. Yama was the first woman to step into his home. At least she wasn't disrupting anyone else's relationship, just sacrificing her own. From time to time, the memories of John still haunted her. His image lingered in her mind, bringing tears and the pain of unanswered questions. How had their years together, from childhood sweethearts to neighbors and lifelong friends, come to this? Like everything was gone to nothing. The memory still pains her. The training finally began. Yama was introduced to Vera, a friend of Rox. At first glance, Vera's high status and polished demeanor were apparent. They exchanged introductions before Vera began asking Yama personal questions.
I want to know how I can help you improve your personality, your appearance, and the areas we need to work on. We'll start with the basics. I'll teach you how to dress to look glamorous and sophisticated, including how to use makeup properly. You'll learn to walk with poise and captivate attention. Rox needs someone who not only supports him but also enhances his image because his reputation is tied to yours.
Yama nodded, listening intently as Vera explained.
We'll also cover how to handle yourself under pressure and how to carry a conversation gracefully. You need to be articulate, engaging, and confident. People will judge you by your words and actions, so you must learn to project composure and strength at all times. Simple table etiquette is a must. Knowing how to use utensils correctly is essential because people will watch you closely to see if you belong in their class. Posture is equally important. You must always appear poised, even when you're exhausted. And yes, you need to exude an air of sophistication and seduction when required.
Yama felt overwhelmed by the sheer volume of information but took mental notes, determined to remember everything.
You must also learn to control your emotions. Even if you feel like crying or losing your composure, you can't show it. This world is full of people who will try to bring you down. One wrong move could ruin Rox's reputation, and he won't tolerate that.
Yama began to see a different side of Rox. Was she wrong about him? The Rox she had met seemed easygoing, but Vera painted a picture of a strict and demanding man.
I'll also tell you about his do's and don'ts. Rox is a completely different person when it comes to work and business. You need to understand and adapt to that side of him.
Yama felt dizzy from all the information but nodded silently. She really wanted to learn everything.
I can see you're struggling, but one thing you must master is masking your emotions. You'll need to pretend and present a calm facade, no matter what.
Do you think I can manage all this? It feels like too much.
Yama asked. She felt overwhelmed. Vera responded bluntly.
Do you have a choice?
Yama paused, realizing the truth. She didn't have a choice. This was her reality whether she liked it or not.
Take a deep breath.
Relax and remind yourself that all of this is for your own good. Who knows? This might be your ticket to success. Consider yourself lucky to have this opportunity.
They moved on to practical lessons, and Yama was encouraged when Vera complimented her progress. She is determined to know everything.
Good job, you're learning quickly,
Vera said, making Yama feel a small sense of accomplishment. Next, Vera demonstrated how to walk confidently and gracefully.
Stand tall with a straight posture, shoulders slightly back. Keep your facial expression confident but natural, smile just a little. Place one foot in front of the other, walking with long, deliberate strides. Let your arms swing slightly at your sides. Practice walking in heels. It's all about attitude and confidence.
Yama observed carefully and tried to replicate Vera's movements. She stumbled several times but kept practicing. By the end of the day, she was exhausted but proud of her effort. During dinner that evening, Rox joined her at the table. They ate mostly in silence, but Yama found herself unconsciously applying the table etiquette she had learned.
You don't have to do everything perfectly right away. Take it slow, and you'll get used to it. Just remember, dining isn't only about the food, It's about the company.
Rox said, breaking the silence. For the first time he gave her a small smile, the first she'd seen since arriving at his house.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to get it right.
You're doing great so far.
Rox reassured her. Yama noted again how serious and reserved Rox seemed, speaking only when necessary. But she was determined to succeed. Vera was right. If she did this well, it could be her gateway to a better future. Yama concentrates on the training and she learns a lot. Rox was away for business for a few days.
Do you drink? Would you like to have a drink with me?
Rox asked after dinner one night after he returned home.
I'm not used to drinking, but I can join you.
Yama replied. The days spent together had begun to bridge the gap between them.
Let's unwind by the pool. You can have a little if you like.
She was amazed upon reaching the pool area. A mini waterfall cascaded on one side. The pool was expansive and vibrant flowers surrounded it. The gentle sound of falling water added to the serene ambience, making the place tranquil and relaxing. The beautifully landscaped area was enhanced by elegant lighting. Yama hadn't ventured to this side of the house before and felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in a long time.
This is my favorite spot outside. I usually come here to relax before bed.
Rox shared as he sipped his wine while looking at the surroundings.
I can see why. The place is so refreshing. It feels like I've been transported back to the province.
Yama said smilingly, still captivated by the place.
Tell me more about your family. What was it like living in the countryside?
Rox asked, his interest being genuine. He loves this newfound ease between them.
It's a lot like this, calm and quiet. By 6 p.m., you won't see anyone outside. Everyone's home, either preparing for bed or winding down. Life is simple and laid back.
Yama said with a smile, reminiscing fondly about her past.
How did you end up in the city?
Life in the province is hard. Most jobs are physically demanding, like farming, and the pay is small. Work starts as early as 4 a.m. Our neighbors who visited from the city would talk about how much better life was here. They seemed so well off and it gave us hope. But when we moved, reality hit us hard. It wasn't what we expected, and we faced countless struggles just to survive.
How did you manage to get through it?
Rox asked carefully, his curiosity evident.
By getting used to it and holding on to our dreams. The hope that someday things would get better, so just kept going.
Yama said with a mix of resolve and vulnerability.
What's your dream?
Rox asked softly, trying not to pry too much.
All we ever wanted was to start a small business to support ourselves, but it didn't happen.
Yama admitted, her voice tinged with sadness.
You're still young. With persistence and hard work, you can make it happen. Focus on what matters most. One day, you'll understand why life is the way it is. Look for the silver linings.
Rox said encouragingly. His words uplifted her spirit. Maybe it wasn't too late for her dreams.
Do you want to try the wine? It's not too strong, and it might help you relax and sleep better.
Rox offered, lightening the mood.
This is nice. It's my first time drinking wine.
Yama said, enjoying the experience.
How did you and your husband meet, if you don't mind me asking?
Rox inquired, eager to know more about her. He is glad Yama started opening up to him.
We were neighbors and grew up together. Our parents were best friends. I thought I knew him well, so I never expected what happened. He wasn't like that. Maybe he got caught up in a bad situation or changed because of the people around him.
Yama said, her voice heavy with emotion. Rox could sense that she still loved her husband and felt her pain.
What about you? Why did you choose to help me? Won't you regret spending so much time and effort on me?
Why would I regret it?
Rox replied, looking at her intently.
Because I don't see anything special about me. I can't figure out why you're doing all this.
Yama said honestly. She wants to know his reasons.
You don't know your value. You are special.
Rox murmured, almost to himself, but Yama heard him.
Maybe I don't see my worth yet, but I know I deserve genuine love and respect.
Yama replied with newfound courage, likely bolstered by the wine.
We need this conversation. Soon, we'll be working together as partners for a year. We'll need to act as if we're truly in love, not just for others but for ourselves. And when I say you're mine, I mean it. I don't set boundaries with the woman I consider mine.
Yama was stunned by his words, unsure how to respond.
I want you to trust me. I won't do anything to harm you. I hope I can trust you too, because I'll be sharing parts of my life that I've never revealed to anyone.
You can count on me. I'll do my best to fulfill this obligation, though I hope you'll be patient with me. This is all new to me.
No worries. Just be open-minded and take responsibility for whatever comes. Life is unpredictable, full of surprises.
Rox said, his words lingering in Yama's mind.
Enjoy your training with Vera. She's good, and what you'll learn from her will be invaluable. Don't pressure yourself. Think of it as an experiment, something new to explore. You might even find yourself enjoying it.
As they talked, Yama realized she was adapting to Rox's world more easily than expected. His broad mindset and thoughtful words made it less intimidating.
Don't forget, you can count on me, no matter what. You're my responsibility now, and my priority.
Rox said gently but firm. Yama stared at him, puzzled. Why was she his priority? She was just another woman doing her job, following his will. Rox's actions were a mystery, and though she wanted to understand him, she hesitated to get too involved. She reminded herself of her place in his life. Temporary. Nothing more, nothing less. One day after my contract ends, I will leave and forget all about this. I will continue living as I used to, but with greater knowledge and broader experience. I hope I can fight this temptation and redeem myself for the sins I have committed.